thank you very much for staying for this, because it's something that I and the team up here feel really, really passionately about. I mean, every, Dave included, every marketing and advertising presentation worth its salt talks about data as the lifeblood of the industry. We proselytize about the opportunity that data presents to target more accurately, to optimize, to refine campaigns, to enhance effectiveness. And you know what? It's absolutely true. What we don't talk about, I think, enough is the added cost and the huge complexity that data has brought to all of our advertising companies, but as a result, publishers as well. And I run operations for one of the biggest global digital media agencies in the world. And what keeps us awake is not just the fact that digital operations is more than twice the price to administer than offline, but it's that we have to deliver error-free, real-time optimization, effective campaigns every day, billions and billions of impressions. And we really have to do it flawlessly all the time, because this is when we are delivering our clients' campaigns. We can't afford to fail at all. Our research tells us that 70% of a data analyst's time is spent pulling, organizing, and cleaning data. 70% of their time. That's before any analysis work is done, before any optimization, before any recommendations are done to clients. That's a problem on so many levels. Here we have really valuable people, high-value people, spending time on low-value stuff, which is keeping them away from really the important work that they've got to do. And I would also posit that this might be a reason for high staff turnover in that area. Because how would you feel if you were a smart young data analyst and you had to spend 70% of your time on ETL and data grunge work? So it really is something that is something that's particularly important for us. And as data gets, everybody talks about, you know, megabytes turning into gigabytes, turning into terabytes and exabytes and whatever comes after that. This isn't going to get any easier. We really have to address it. And I think that Brendan and Brian touched on it on the panel before, is that programmatic buying and automation will help it, but I think that there's a hell of a lot more that we've got to discuss. So the good news is that I've got 5 of the best minds here who are going to help us with some of that and certainly discuss it here. The panel will address how to harness some of the data that makes our lives simpler. And I think all of the panelists here have products that can help make our lives more efficient if you're an agency, a publisher, or a marketer. Each one of the companies represented here addresses that friction by using some form of technology to make advertising operations less complex. So rather than me introduce each of these guys, what I'm going to ask to do is, starting with Neil, is that everybody spends a minute talking about themselves, introducing themselves, but also a little bit about what your company does to make our lives a little easier.
Good afternoon. It's nice that you guys stayed for the last session, and thanks for hanging out. I've been in this business for about 40 years. Yesterday, Jack Myers talked about we've been 20 years in transition. We continue to transition, and we must continue to change. The data that we get at Squad, we are a company that provides media cost databases to the industry. We collect information from the agencies and from the agency transaction systems. We've been doing it for broadcast for 22 years. It's pretty clean. It's relatively easy. We've got a product called WebCost. We are collecting digital information. We're going backwards. We have not been able to get the clean data that John was talking about. There is no discipline in how the data is going into these systems. The time it takes us to clean the data is enormous. And ultimately, we want to get the data quickly to our customers so that they can do the analysis that they need to do. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today and from all of the people who are here. I think I'm the only database company, here today, and I'm probably the oldest guy, at least on the panel.
Shawn?
A little bit about Squad, all right, because many of you may not know, we've been in business for 22 years. We provide media cost databases for local television, for national television, including cable broadcast and syndication. And now we are into the web cost system, which is the digital data CPMs for display. And coming up, this year we will start to get into video.
Hello, I'm John Shelton, president of Strata. We have about 1,000 agencies that use our system, from Horizon down to the littlest agencies. We're probably best known for making things electronic, in electronic invoicing, electronic ordering. Now we're doing copy, and our new goal is to bring audio to radio, so that our buyers are not buying TV and radio anymore, they're buying audio and video. And Pandora was a large project of ours recently, and we'll have some more coming out.
Great.
Hi, my name's Greg Smith, and I'm the CEO of Ergonomic. We launched in September, and it stemmed out of, 25 years of being in this industry. I've worked with Neil and John and the other members on this panel for a long time. I was the CIO at McCann for 11 years. I was the CIO at Initiative and Zenith, and I was at Ipsos for about a year. I started as a developer like John did, so we kind of know the systems from the inside out. And one of the things that we found a long time ago was when people got together and started focusing on standards, we could solve problems. The actual niche that we have right now in this particular space happens to be around data and analytics. And a lot of the work that we're doing is the hard work that Neil was talking about, is taking that data in, ETL processes, getting it into a central database and doing something with the data. The fun work is actually doing something with the data, the so what. So if you think of a marketer who's looking at all aspects of data, from whether it's brand awareness, search, competitive spending, whatever, you're looking at 75, upwards of 100 data streams coming at you, and what do you do with it? So making sense out of that is very difficult. We have a platform that we think is heading in the right direction, but it's not there yet. And I think the biggest issue we'll talk about on today's panel is the friction that exists in the process today in our industry. And we, in many ways, as an industry, exist because of that friction. The compensation today is based on a staff plan, and that's based on friction. We need to be based on performance. And that's going to be a big shift, but when we get there, that's going to be where we need to land.
Yeah, I was joking with Brian Lesser a little earlier, and we were saying it shouldn't be called big data, it should be called little data, because there are lots and lots and lots of little pieces, and which causes all the complexity. Sorry, Shawn.
That's great. I'm Shawn Riegsecker. I'm the founder and CEO of Centro. You know, probably in a little bit misdirection from everyone that's been talking, I don't think big data is the problem. I don't think it's anywhere near the biggest problem inside the industry. It's really funny. We sit here, we talk about transformation. You listen to all the ills that everyone's discussing today throughout all the 4A's. It is can't find great talent, can't attract great talent, can't recruit the talent. We've got a creativity issue. We've got a margin issue. The biggest problem today facing us is the fact that there is growing complexity that we've never seen before from a media perspective. And yet it's 2013, and there has been almost zero software automation in the, now 17 years since I've been doing digital. That's the biggest problem. And it is so, every problem that we have right now stems back to that. John, you talked about data. 70% of your team's pulling data. They don't have time to analyze the data.
Yeah.
Centro, we're a cloud-based software and managed services company. And our goal is to, and our mission is to automate the entire media operations system so that the people in our industry can actually get back to doing what we hire them to do: strategy, creative, data and analytics. So that's what we're working on.
We'll definitely get into the why we are like we are in a minute. I'm looking forward to that discussion. Dave.
Great, thank you. I'm Dave Oliveira. I'm GM and SVP over at MediaOcean. MediaOcean is the merger of Donovan Data Systems and MediaBank, for those that need the refresher. I hope we don't at this point. I also run the MBI business for MediaOcean, which is our business for small to mid-size agencies. A couple of things for MediaOcean automation, and part of the merger was to give us a platform that we could open up to create interoperability between all the different tool sets and in folks that have data and supply and make that available through a system that you as an industry and we can all help create and solve for some of these issues. The second thing we've been doing has been focused around really making planning tools and other tools within the platform, not just a platform for buying of media. We'll get into more details on how we think about that. But look, I think we all share the same challenges and we're all trying to solve for the same things, and should be a lively discussion. And I do want to note that 3 of us are from Chicago, so I think we should make this Springer style. We filmed it there. I think that would be good, right?
Okay. All right, so Shawn, seeing that you brought this up, we've known about this digital operations problem for 10 years. I've been here for 7 of those 10 years, and the moment that I got here, it was the biggest headache I've got. We've been buggering around with solutions, and we're not even vaguely there. In fact, I think we're worse off now than we were before. Why?
Well, we are worse off now because complexity has, grown a multi-fold since then. John, the reason we're in this, and the question is also, how can we fix it now? Is there something different happening right now than happened 10 years ago when we started talking about it? I think the answer is yes. First of all, though, you got to fix it with software. Okay, you can't fix it with anything else. So unfortunately, there hasn't been a product in market yet that your planners actually want to use, want to log into, and actually says that it actually solves their day. Hopefully, between the work that we're all doing here on the stage, I think we're going to see some incredible, great user interfaces emerge to help. Secondly, look, change is difficult, and the agencies, and your colleagues it's almost like the pain has got to be so great that it forces change sometimes upon us. What we see right now is that, I talked to an executive earlier today. They hire over 200 college graduates every year. They stick them in front of a computer, and 40% of them drop out. And people go, why? And by the way, it's not the C students who are dropping out, it's the A kids. We can't retain the talent because we're making them do work they don't want to do. We got a talent issue, we got a creative issue, and we got a margin issue. And procurement firms are killing us with greater complexity. The pain is so great, we're now finally, I think, all the elements are here. We've got great software coming, or already in market, and we've got pain great enough that people are willing to move.
So we're waiting for the magic software to come, and it's going to help us solve this whole problem. Dave?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So clearly, and we're a software company. Software absolutely is key, and we run software that helps with compliance and workflow, which are all part of important parts of the process. But I think one thing we have to agree on is that there has to be standards, right? There has to be we brought to the IAB standards around electronic invoice and against electronic I/O. I think we've had conversations with the 4A's on the same topic. I think we can all work closer together. I think that it's been done in this industry before. Digital's been late to the party, but we need to get to those standards and quickly so that we can move forward.
I think, John, there's a great example in the television space with the TVB and with the CAB, where they put a concerted effort to deal with this friction area. And I'll just talk quickly on the CAB, where they had done a pretty good job at getting the measurement nailed and getting acceptance, on their side. The agencies have put in optimizers, the black box. We push the button, buy more cable. Okay, great. But the reality was that as those transactions grew, sitting on a buyer's desk, when they took that estimate, it came in electronically, but every change after that came in manually through a fax or an email or whatever. And all those changes stacked up on the buyer's desk. So that was one thing. The second thing is agencies were not in a position to staff up against that increase of transaction in cable. So the buyer's sitting there on a Friday afternoon having to deal with all these changes, and they can't. It's impossible. So they started with the scrap to scrap to scrap, and all of a sudden you've got this big issue. How did we deal with it? Actually, I have to say Sean Cunningham did a good job. He pulled all of his constituents together with the 4A's and with the providers that we were working with at the time and said, here's your problem. You need standards. If you guys agree as the cable networks that you can send us those transactions in a standard fashion, we can address a problem you all have, which they wouldn't really deal with in the room, which was inventory utilization. It was going into the toilet because buyers were discrepping stuff. So when we fixed it, you saw a massive change in the cable space. You saw the same thing with the TVB, and you're starting to see the same thing with radio, with what John's been doing. That's one of the things we need to address. Yes, software will help, but we need the industry to agree on standards. As much as I'd like to work with every agency in fixing their data problems, I'd rather spend time with agencies on solving other problems, finding insights, and actually coming up with great platforms that move us forward as opposed to fixing the old stuff. And so I think we need to focus on standards and agreements at some point in time. That has to be part of the process. No matter what technology you have, unless you have some standard transaction process and metadata and transactional data, we're still going to have the problem. Every other industry that we look at has some level of standards, and that's really a big area for us to focus on, especially in digital.
Yeah, I mean,
if I could add, you know, the efforts that went through the areas you're just talking about, ePort, so they required true change agents. They required a huge amount of persistence. It was years in the making, and you realized the problem, and that problem probably wasn't even nearly as bad as what we're facing within the digital world. And so there isn't a change agent, and if there isn't a discipline, all right, you know, not only with the software, but with the people who are inputting whatever information, you got hundreds and thousands of people, you know, putting data into these systems. And so if the discipline doesn't come down and they don't use that software, you know, we'll end up being nowhere. So the change agent really has to be there, and there has to come from the top.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I have a sort of different tact. We just change. We just we have a slightly different group, because we have 1,000 agencies, and many of them are smaller, mid-size, and some larger ones. And what's your largest problem? And then we solve it for that group. And then what I noticed is that when we're solving it for that group, other people are on board. Most of the media, we didn't actually ask the TV stations where they wanted to be on board. We wrote a system and let the buyers demand that you use the system. And we did that for radio, we did it for cable, and we just demanded, said, buyers, here you go. Here's a system, and the TV guys, we're not going to charge them. They can log on and pull down the orders and send you invoices and all of that. And it was very hard to get the consensus. We got it close, but then when it was close enough, we just ran with it. And then we would accept everybody else's variations on that, or if they created a platform that was slightly different, a format that was slightly different, we would take all comers, and it sort of worked for us.
Right, you started with a base.
Yeah, we did like the committee to create, at least get us close to the target.
Yeah. Yeah.
John, one quick comment though. Look, I don't know if we need more standardization. In fact, I think that we're actually too commoditized as a digital industry already. I mean, commoditization kills creativity. I'm sitting here looking at a thing called the idea effect. Okay, great software should allow dynamic planning and buying to take place. Too often we try to make our planners work inside of the software versus the software, being flexible enough to allow the planners to be more imaginative and creative in their planning cycle. And so this, it struck me the irony yesterday that we've got the Google Chief Creative Officer presenting to the entire conference. Now, I don't know of one company that's probably done more to kill creativity, through commoditization in the industry than what they have. I love the fact that they're doing it. I'm so supportive of their concept. Yet every single idea that was presented yesterday, you can't buy through programmatic buying through an ad exchange. Okay, with the exception of possibly buying a video on YouTube. And so, if we want to talk about transformation, we want to talk about creativity, we want to talk about ideas, then let's make sure that the software is flexible enough to allow people to be fully cognizant of their imagination and put the best stuff out there. I think we've got ad servers, we've got ad sizes, we've got IEB doing that. We've got too much commoditization at this point.
I mean, I buy the standardization thing, Greg, I do. I think that we have to scale this industry, and if we don't, you can't scale an industry like this unless you have standardization. But I will tell you that in my 7 years in this business, and I have nowhere near the kind of experience that you guys have got as developers and IT guys, I'm a marketing and advertising guy, but every time I try and create happy meals for advertising, we have our big clients saying, I'm sorry, I want 9 columns on my printout, and another client wants 13 different columns. And frankly, they're paying the bill. So we have to find a way where we can accommodate, and I think it's about openness, and it's about collaboration, and it's about all of those good things that you're talking about. So I think that the standardization thing is absolutely true, but I think it's a little bit broad and flip. I think we have to standardize T's and C's, and we've got to standardize impressions, and we've got to standardize those good things, but we absolutely have to leave it open. This is maybe a little controversial for you guys, and because I know that agencies are your clients, and I warned you I was going to ask you this question. Do you think that the agencies are part of the problem here? Do you think that it's a lack of willingness to change, that it's hard to go back a few steps before we go forward? What are you seeing from an agency perspective? I'm sure nobody here would hold it against you if you were a little critical.
I don't, I don't, because that's too much of a scapegoat. The agencies, yes, there needs to be a little leadership, and usually we can start it, and then we need a few agencies to come on board with that. But we've never had a lack of being able to find that leadership, amongst a group of folks. But you definitely need somebody that's going to take it and try it and demand that their vendors use it. And we've always been, we've had a few good relationships with a few agencies that will do that. They'll go out to the marketplace and they say, all right, you're going to do it this way. And but is everybody, even some of my best agencies that are my best innovators, sometimes they're not on board. It's not right for them at this point to push that issue. So we'll go out and find somebody else and do it. It's not right for every agency at every time. It's not their biggest pain point. But if you imagine just 6 years ago, I mean, you had a group of people, a large group of young people typing in invoices. You had another large group of people standing at fax machines. You had traffic departments that were calling up people, making sure those copy instructions showed up everywhere. Our goal, every time I saw that large group of young people, I wanted them gone. Because it's a dumb job and they shouldn't be doing it, and they should be, the buyer is really the one we support, and we really want the job where you're using your head and not where you're just doing the same thing over again.
We heard yesterday, that there are still lots of orders being faxed. Lots of people still using fax machines and not using the electronic, ordering that's even available today. So I think that, you're absolutely right. I think when an agency realizes the value of being able to drill deeper and get the analysis that's ultimately going to make for a better plan or in a better buy, and they're going to be able to support their clients better, which I think more agencies are doing that. We heard a lot of that right here. And as people recognize that, they're not going to be upset with the change. They're not going to hold it back. I think there's a frustration that it's existing within agencies now, even with the analytical systems that you're developing internally, to get data into those analytical systems so you can get the benefits and get the results for your clients.
I think you're seeing some agencies also spend time looking at the process, because the process that they go through, and they've done certain things the same way forever. When they stand back and say, why are we doing that? And whether that's for an internal constituent or for a client, that's an important step. As soon as you start asking, why am I doing this, to your point of the 9-column versus the 7-column, maybe taking that a bit further with the client and say, what are you doing with it? How can we do this better together? We've seen that in a couple of cases where you spend time with the client or internally looking at finding a better way to do the same thing, quicker, faster, better. It's a combination of not just the technology, which is a big piece of it, of course, but it's people, it's process, and it's technology. And when we connect those, you then, I think, we're on the right path. But just technology is just one part of the stool. You need the 3 legs to really stand up on this.
Okay.
I think our role really should be to help the agencies solve the efficiency issue, right? So that they can focus on more of the high-value activities, creative, It's not, and we can't do that with just a fancy interface. It's not, that doesn't solve it. What solves it is making it easier for them to get access to the big data, pulling in third parties into platforms that they already are using. We've also done the integration with Pandora, so pulling in those supply partners. We've worked with, and we'll soon announce, some relationships where we're pulling more of the data providers into a planning tool, right? So that they can actually access the data that they use every day in a different system. We hear that all the time. I don't want to log into 3 or 4 systems to do my job. So the more we can do that, and that's incumbent on us opening up our platform, which Prisma is our product to help kind of do that, which we're in market bringing that to agencies today. But I think ultimately we have to put the agency partners in a position to go back to their clients and say, look, we are no longer needing to spend time on this. Look at what we can do with this time and effort and the dollars that we rightfully deserve for their high value activities. Whether that's programmatic's really exciting, but it allows agencies to really focus on higher value activities. There's efficiencies there. It's not a cure-all, and I think Moorcroft said it really well. It's not a panacea. I think he made the point of automation versus programmatic. Very big distinction there, but there's a lot of upside, and I think our job is to help get it out of and put it back into the agency hands, and hopefully the agencies can make some movement with their partners or their end client.
John, have you stood in the way? The answer is the incentive, the way that you get paid has been a barrier. Compensation based upon number of FTEs. There's been no incentive to create efficiency. But I don't think that's the problem. I think we're the problem. I think had any of us brought forth a platform that your planners love to use, you would have accepted it. We had this conversation 3 years ago. You absolutely would have been saying, bring us something that works, because I want to fix this for my agency. But the fact of the matter is, great and incredible software takes a lot of time to build. Bidding is actually a relatively easy concept from an ad serving. Automating human process, human interaction and collaboration, and doing it right is very difficult.
I mean, there is an irony to the fact that if you're based on a FTE model, the more people that you have in your business, the more money you make. So here we are having an efficiency conversation, but I think it's fundamentally, we realize that we absolutely have to become more efficient, and our clients are going to drive us to that efficiency. It's a good point. Any of us who have tried to implement any form of centralized system and workflow and process in an agency or a group of agencies knows that creating great software is the first challenge, but maybe the biggest challenge of all is getting people to adopt it and getting people to change behavior. So somebody much cleverer than me said that it's not about changing structure, it's about changing behavior. What kind of insights do you all have for us all? Because we all know that we're going to be adopting these systems. We have to, for our very survival. Things are going to get more complex, so we absolutely have to. What are the best practices you've seen in terms of changing behavior? I don't, John, do you want to start?
Actually, there's a lot of answers to that. One, I mean, we have one of our largest clients has actually hired Greg here to go over all their systems and say, how are we doing this? How are we doing this? How are we doing it? Can we do it better? Can we do it better? And I think getting that sort of outside peer review is a really wholesome thing for agencies to do. And in reality, I haven't seen it very often. So I think that was a great thing. Also, I think leadership is really important. When I think Neil and I were talking about this earlier. When you have a bunch of fields for the digital, type in all the fields, and there's nobody in management that's not looking at the reports, that are coming out and saying, I can't put this to a client because the data wasn't input. And as soon as they manage on the data that their people are giving them, the people aren't typing in that data for my benefit or their own benefit. They're typing in that data for their client's benefit, for the management's benefit. And if the management doesn't call it on them, if they don't use those reports, if they just complain, oh, well, the reports are wrong. Well, wait a minute. Your people, you have to insist and you have to call on your people and say, you didn't, you know, you're not filling in the form. That just seems basic to me, and I think that's leadership on the agency side. But you know, I normally win on that. That one of my agencies that does do it and does type it in usually wins the business. So you know, it's a matter of Darwin.
Any other insights? Dave? Dave?
I think I've tried to put software into sales organizations, and you vet all the best automation tools for that. You pick it, and if you don't push it to your team and own it, it doesn't get adopted, right? So I think there's certainly a piece of it has to be leadership led, obviously. I think the other piece is that we just got to continue to listen, not to what I think in the past has been, you know, folks like us have listened to the CFOs and not the planning teams, and I think we need to change that, and I think we are, and really understanding how they want to use it. And you know, we're in that listening, we're hearing, okay, we want to be able to access these types of data providers right in the platform, and I think that's absolutely finding that balance. But to think that you can create great software and it just gets adopted like magic is I don't think a reality. But there has to be some level of balance with that.
See, I actually, I disagree that, look, you can't force software usage. You can't. And it's never going to happen in the future of our industry. And our planners are 20-something kids. They love software. They live their entire life via the web and via their phone and via the software. Software adoption is not an issue for the target market, which is really the audience that we're going after. It's just an incumbent to create software that actually helps their job, not cost them more time, which is, you know, what historically has been the issue. So, you know, I love the competition between a lot of us on the panel. You know, I don't know, you know, if a Martian dropped into our industry today, you'd think that our whole industry was being bought through RTV. Okay, yet it's, you know, it's 19% of the entire market today, maybe moving up to 25, 30. But the fact of the matter is the bigger problem is actually solving the inefficiencies in media operations. Where's the big players? Where's Adobe? Where's Google? Where's IBM? Where's some of these other folks coming in? Competition is a great thing. The industry probably hasn't had enough of it over the last 10 to 15 years to build something great.
The problem with that point is bringing in an IBM or Adobe or other people is it's not a big enough market for them to play. So there were a few people who tried to come into the market years and years ago. They came in, they got burnt, they lost money, they left. So I really do think it is incumbent upon not only the technology providers, but the agencies to solve this together. To John's point about leadership, it's really critical, and there's definitely a point in terms of getting the kids that are, you know, sitting on the system every day using it. It's a multi-pronged approach. You have to have software that they can use, there's no question, but you have to have the leadership driving it. If those two things are in place, you're on your way. I've worked at agencies where we went through multi-reviews. It's a really, really big job to put in a system. So if you're going on to any one of these systems from another system, that's huge. It takes 12, 18 months to really do that. That's a big distraction for your business. You know, when we're all competing as agencies pitching business, to be distracted to move to another system is a massive effort. You have to be really sure that when you go down that road, it's the right road. So I think there's that hesitation that everyone knows, if I make this decision, it's a lot of work. So they tend to fall back on, I can live in the world I'm in, I can get by, I'll be okay. I think it's a very big leadership step to move to a new system, to move to a new process, or to hire individuals to lead and make those decisions, and to choose technology that they can use, to be brave and stick with it. I mean, that's the other thing, is having the fortitude to make that decision and stay on the path. If you believe in it and you know it's going to land in a good place, then sticking with it. I've seen too many cases where people have flip-flopped, but when they stick with the plan, and to John's point, where someone has a case and they can see it working and they propagate that through the organization, they tend to be successful.
Yeah, ultimately the process needs to be proven out that it's going to cost less than what they're doing now. You know, the people who are adopting some of these processes have to feel good about the software, to be sure. They have to like what they're doing. And you have to have some creativity that, you know, allows them to, you know, do their jobs. But if you're doing it in a way where everybody's just going in a different direction, then I think it's very difficult to manage. It's very difficult to get the reports that management needs to get to their clients. So, you know.
So when my boss, Erwin Gottlieb, calls me in on the carpet and he says, so why is digital so inefficient? Why does it cost us so much money to transact? I say what 95 or probably 99% of what you would all say was, it's much more complicated than offline. But sometimes you go, I kind of have been thinking about that, and maybe we use that too much as an excuse. And if you have a look at what offline have done in television, what offline have done in electronic invoicing, which we're still grappling with, we have a few things to learn from our offline colleagues. What is it, do you think, we could take from offline? You've all been in offline and online together, if not you personally, your companies have. And what do you think we can take into online from offline that'll make our lives a little easier? Do you want to talk? I mean, I know that you're Media Ocean now, and you and it's well beyond the Donovan days, but you know, that's where your roots were.
So I think TV is the best proxy for what could be, right? And look, I actually am a digital native, although I was in the newspaper business. I don't know if that makes me a digital native. But I think the point being is that, I've sat with, as I came into this organization, sat with the folks that help that TV process become easier and more scalable. But I think it's the best by far. All the digital guys keep saying, hey, the dollars need to move here because we get more time spent, but somehow it seems to continue to grow, right? It clearly has to be partially because it's easy to buy, so it's easy to have creativity. It's easy to let agencies provide the value add on top of the process. And I think that's what we're advocating for is let's make the process easy so the high value activities can happen, creative, all the things that we've kind of talked about. But electronic invoice, I think electronic IO, and the way that it's been explained to me was that a couple agencies said, hey, we will no longer buy this unless you send it via electronic IO. I'll let you guys talk more to that.
Absolutely.
That was Kathy Crawford.
Kathy Crawford sent out a letter, but
Said, I'm not gonna buy you.
I would say we have lots of agencies all the time. When they run across a station that's not electronic, they're like, you get on board or you don't get bought. Yeah. And I actually think maybe on the digital area, because there's when there's a person between the buyer and the end guy, that there's not that requirement of an electronic interface. And I think if to the extent that either those in-between folks, and on television that you would have a rep, and those guys went electronic. They were one of the first ones, and I can tell you that most of the reps are very electronic right now. And I would say that possibly all of the middlemen, and there's lots of them in that case, need to be electronic, and the agencies should probably insist that their middlemen are, whenever they use them, are 100% electronic with their publishers, all the way back from the publishers to the middleman to the agency, and make sure that every step is electronic. Walmart does it. Most of the big retailers.
It's a discipline. Our business can't be more complicated than Walmart or Target. Shawn, your business is had its genesis in helping kind of make sense of the local newspaper market, and that's where you guys came from. What did you learn there that we can use in digital?
Yeah, so for those, so we started the business. My whole thesis was if we could automate digital local, we can automate the whole industry. So that was where we started and why we did that. Look, I think there are very few, if any, lessons we can take from offline and talk about the future for media buying. The first thing we got to do is get our industry off of archaic tools like Outlook, Excel, and Word. Even the fact that we've got electronic and great systems in the TV world, people are still communicating with very archaic communication systems, which is email. Okay, we got to get it off that and into the cloud. That's where we start. Second to that, the idea that we can look at systems and what happened before. I just think when we think about the next few years, by 2017, you're going to be able to research, plan, buy, distribute, optimize, reconcile, and invoice completely digital on almost every piece of media in the world, including television. So we should be rethinking the next 5 years from a software perspective, and really thinking about collaboration and allowing people to work better on ideas together, and versus trying to figure out, PDF, electronic PDFs to me isn't an electronic medium. That's not real cloud-based software.
Exactly.
So.
No.
Well, we're out of time. I know what this would look like in 3 years' time. I think we're going to be forced to change. I think we have absolutely no option. It just gets more and more exciting, but more complex all the time. Thank you very much. I think I really appreciate your insights. A big hand for the panel.